Well, today we're getting into the main body of Genesis 2, this second account of creation. And it really zooms into that sixth day. It's focused on humanity. Chapter 2 looks at just what would have been questions for ancient peoples of who have we been made to be? What is the role of humanity in relation to God, in relation to one another, in relation to creation? And this chapter gives more details, more nuance, more of a foundation for these kinds of questions for the people that Moses wrote this for, that God gave to as the people were still in the wilderness. If you try to put Genesis 2 into kind of a chronological timeline with Genesis 1, it causes different questions and issues, and people have proposed all kinds of just theories of how to make these details work, because there's plants and trees created and then humanity, but then in chapter 2 you see, well, there aren't plants and things going because there was no humans to cultivate them yet. And so again, if we try to look at this as a chronological description of what God has done, we're missing how ancient readers would have been understanding this and the questions that they were asking. Again, it's how do we relate to this God? What is the relationship he wants from us? Certain ancient worldviews, humanity were slaves. That's how their worldview showed them to be. All they were there was to serve the gods. But here in verses 5 through 7, we see that God created humanity. And the word often translated in English as formed, in Hebrew, is a word more like for an artist. So God was kind of creatively, as an artist, forming this man. The word Adam, for man, is related to the Hebrew word Adamah, for ground. And there's a word play going. It's just, this is where we've come from. God made us from the earth, from the clay, and yet we are the image of God. As we go back to chapter 1, verses 26 and 27. And God breathed the breath of life. He breathed his life into the clay, the Adamah, that he made into a Adam. And just the simple point I want to draw us to from this is what this text is communicating is that we have been made for relationship with God. There's no other animal, there's no other part of creation that had God's breath, that was breathed into, this breath of life. We were made, and as we see that there was no plants because there was no human to cultivate, to tend the garden before God made Adam. We were made to be co-workers with God. There's this part where God has a role for us, but as we see as we continue, it's not as slaves, but he wants us to enter into what God designs and desires to do. That we work with him, that we learn to work according to his ways. Later on, we see Adam given the responsibility of naming the animals. And again, in ancient culture, in the Hebrew culture, to name something meant that you had authority or responsibility over what or who it was that you were naming. And so for these animals, God is going, I'm sovereign, but Adam, I'm giving you this authority to use in cooperation with me. So here's my question for today. How are you joining God as a co-worker in his work, his business, his kingdom? How are you using your authority that God has given you to be a blessing to his creation, to those he has made in his image, and to him and his kingdom? Pray that you'll consider these questions today. Now may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you. And today, may you know his peace. God bless.